Contemporaries of the 17th century French artist Claude Mellan refer to him as the most precise engraver that has ever been. And looking at this engraved face of Jesus, I will have to agree. In 1649, Mellan picked up his burin, which is a chisel-like tool, to engrave a copper plate. He created a single spiraling line of 150 meters, some 500 feet, to create the face of Christ. Starting from the tip of Jesus' nose, he changed the angle and pressure of the burin to make the line thicker and thinner in different places to create this spectacular portrait. And if you can make this portrait, you can be sure that he made many other incredible works. Mellan created numerous engravings of portraits, biblical scenes, and various kinds of other scenes, including this detailed engraving of the surface of the moon. Claude Mellan was born in 1598, and the first known engraving from his hand I know about comes from 1619, when he was 21 years old. It's a portrait of Girolamo Frescobaldi, and you can already see the precise patterns and the firmness with which he applied the burin to the copper plate when creating this work. It would be the beginning of a very long and prosperous career as an engraver. 64 years after his first work, now age 85, Mellan created this engraving of the resurrection of Christ, still with incredible precision, but also much more refined than his first portrait. When making a portrait of someone, he would first make a drawing with chalk and/or graphite, and then turn that in his studio into an engraving. In the first 20 years of his career, Mellan mostly used a so-called hatching technique to create the forms and brightness in his engravings. Let me illustrate some of these techniques with this portrait of Nicolas Coeffetot, the Bishop of Marseille, engraved when Mellan was 25 years old. The general idea of his technique is that the quantity, thickness, and spacing of the lines will affect the brightness of the overall image and emphasize forms, creating the illusion of volume. For example, the background of this painting consists of horizontal lines, not too close to each other and not very thick. This creates a nice light contrast to the denser lines used for the portrait. Looking at the bishop's head, starting at the right side from our point of view, we can see that Mellan used parallel but curved lines. The curve of the line generally follows the shape of the object he tried to capture. The lines are somewhat closer together and thicker than the lines used for the background, creating a clear contrast between both surfaces. This technique of parallel lines is called hatching. Now, the light clearly comes from the right side of the artwork, making the right side of the head appear lighter than the other side. To capture the front of the head, Mellan could even leave a white space. But on the left side of the head, he created some more shadow by including thicker lines, basically by pressing the burin a bit stronger into the copper plate. And the width between the lines also slightly decreases, creating a darker impression on that side of the head. And some parts of the right and left of this side of the head are even darker because of a technique called cross-hatching, where Mellan combines the more horizontal lines with lines at a contrasting angle. Going down on the portrait, we can clearly see how the artist used the direction of the lines to create different features of the face, like his forehead, his facial hair, the area around his eyes, the nose, etc. Again, we see how the thickness, quantity, and the cross-hatching increases for areas on the left side of the portrait from our point of view to create the correct brightness, matching the light coming from the right. When he was about 40 years old, Mellan changed his technique from the standard hatching techniques just explained to focus more on the thickness of the lines, varying the thickness of a single line to create different textures and lighting. You can nicely see this in this portrait of the Virgin Mary from 1650. Just follow the lines starting on the nose of Mary, going over her cheek, running into her neck. He starts by making them a bit thicker, gradually making them thinner, creating more light, at some spots even discontinuing the line to create the brightest spots, and then gradually thickening them again to create a shadowy area of the neck. And the gentle, ever-changing curvature of the lines creates the shape of the face. When we zoom out from the details, we see that this technique creates a much softer and more refined portrait. If we put two portraits next to each other, we can clearly see the different results his techniques created. The one on the left is made earlier in his career when he still used the traditional methods using hatching and cross-hatching, and the one on the right does not use any cross-hatching or overlapping lines, but is purely based on the thickness and curvature of the lines. I'll let you be the judge which technique you prefer, but the innovative ways in which his new technique could suddenly make much more elegant engravings certainly had its benefits for certain subjects, and it set his works apart from those of other engravers. A critique, though, from some contemporaries, and I have to agree, is that this new technique worked wonderfully for some more intimate portraits, but for larger scenes, which would require greater contrast and shadows, the results of this new technique can be a bit underwhelming, as you may see in this scene from 1663 entitled Moses Before the Burning Bush. In the beginning of his career, Mellan engraved mostly paintings by other artists, especially several by one of his teachers, Simon Vouet. But over time, he started to draw his own designs before turning them into engravings, greatly increasing his reputation. It was great to be a skilled engraver of other works, but it would merely make you a talented craftsman. But if you also made your own designs, it greatly elevated your status as a true artist. And so the rich and famous from France and abroad were searching his services. Among them were several royalties who loved the idea that a single portrait could be reproduced multiple times by creating prints, such that they could spread their portrait through their kingdom. Mellan made a total of around 400 unique works during his career, and many of those are available in high resolution online. And in this video, I have only been able to show you a small but representative subset of his work. And it would be even nicer if you have the opportunity to see one of his works in person. Now, most of you have probably never come across his work in a museum, but I assure you that there are many large museums around the world that own at least one of his engravings. The challenge, though, is that engravings are rarely hanging on the wall of a museum, partly because of their sensitivity to light. So to see his work, you probably need to contact the museum first to see them by appointment. Or you need to open some of the drawers in their special rooms with drawings and prints. But I can certainly recommend you doing so. And if you have seen some of his works in real life, I'm curious to hear your opinion in the comment section down below. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video about the brilliance of Claude Mellan. And if you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons to support the channel. Thanks for watching.